the tabs on them. That's why you should be concerned about these things like the coronavirus coming out again at the very site where China put in their first biosafety lab. You know, when I look at the people talking about the 75th anniversary, I think it was, of Auschwitz this week, they were talking about Josef Mengele. We brought those guys in as part of Operation Paperclip. Now, he went to Brazil, right? But we brought in the scientists to start our bioweapons project, as well as our chemical weapons project. We brought in Nazi scientists. We brought in Japanese scientists who had experimented on American soldiers who are prisoners. We brought those evil people in because we said, we want the weapons and we don't really care about the ethics, which is exactly what the Nazis did. And so you want to trust these people? You want to trust the CDC with these systems, with this program? That's eventually going to come after each and every one of us. Another example of this and these is the CIA waterboarding, quote unquote, that is now coming out. We have some pretrial hearings going on at Gitmo, where they are taking a look at what happened with torture. They're reopening that. And in testimony there, James Mitchell, one of only 3 men who are authorized by the CIA to conduct waterboarding, said last Thursday during a pretrial hearing at Gitmo, he started talking about one CIA officer who is known as the preacher. He would provoke detainees on a deeply religious level while working to extract information from them, reports Zero Hedge. They said that he would, at random times, put one hand on the forehead of a detainee. He would raise the other hand high in the air, and in a deep southern drawl, he would say things like, "Can you feel it, son? Can you feel the spirit moving down my arm into your body?" Yeah, you talk about being creepy. You talk about being sadistic. These people are capable of anything. You look at John Brennan, focused on taking Trump out. Well, he's been doing this kind of stuff for a long time. And quite frankly, Gina Haspel, that President Trump put in charge of the CIA, is no better than John Brennan. No better at all. She was a part of this monstrous program. And if you think that it is warranted because you don't like these terrorists, and I don't like them either. I don't like terrorists. Screw them. Do whatever you want to them. You know, we probably got a ticking time bomb somewhere, so torture them to get the information. Well, you know that when we tortured these people at Gitmo with Gina Haspel as part of that program, she was the one who covered it all up, that the information that we got from that torture program was the basis of the lies about weapons of mass destruction that got us involved in the Iraq War. So I'm saying to all of you who want to justify this kind of situational ethics and to allow us to have our own Joseph Mengeles, but, you know, hey, we're exceptional because we got an American flag or an American uniform. No, we've brought that stuff in. Operation Paperclip, look it up. Look at the kinds of people that we brought in. And we're still doing that type of thing. We not only brought in their technology, but we brought in their ethics. And it is now expressed by people like John Brennan and Gina Haspel. And this is continuing to go on. I've talked many times to John Kiriakou. The only person who went to jail for any of this stuff was a whistleblower who told people about it. And he told people about it because it was unethical, it was illegal and unconstitutional, and because it was ineffective. He said, you're going to get garbage from these people. You're going to get them to tell you whatever you want them to tell you. And you know what they wanted? They wanted them to say, we've got weapons of mass destruction in Iraq so they could invade Iraq. And that's exactly what they got. Doesn't work. It does not work. We become the monsters that we seek to destroy abroad. And so this guy, James Mitchell, one of the 3 authorized torturers for waterboarding, confirmed the descriptions in his memoir, Enhanced Interrogation. And as they were talking about this, they said the government prosecutors changed the classification rules just 4 days before the current pretrial hearing. And then they amended them again this Monday in order to reclassify facts, which defense attorneys were forced to scramble to reframe before the next day of questioning. It's kind of what Gina Haspel did when she destroyed evidence, when she erased all of the videotapes. Can you imagine if those videotapes had surfaced? You know, the descriptions were bad enough. Each sought to use their links to CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, to get the others removed from their post. See, that's the essence of what's going on right now in the Trump war, right, with the deep state and with these people. We got a clean house. I mean, it's far worse than a swamp that needs to be drained. I mean, this truly is a pandemic virus that has enveloped Washington at every level. In the courtroom this week, the interrogation's chief has been referred to by the code NX2. Mitchell calls him the quote-unquote new sheriff in town. But it's been reported that his name was Charlie Wise, who had honed his craft carrying out interrogations for the Contra rebels in Nicaragua in the 1980s. Again, we go back to the Reagan administration and Iran-Contra. Were the Iranians bad guys? Yes. Yes, they were. Yes, they were. They took over the embassy. But then the Reagan administration and people like Oliver North said, we'll sell you weapons parts so we can fund our war in Nicaragua. So they weren't that bad, were they? Or were they? Who were the bad guys in that scenario? The guys selling the bad guys the weapons or the bad guys themselves? And of course, the bulk of their money, they weren't getting enough money from that, so they created crack cocaine epidemic at the same time. We'll be right back. All right, let's talk briefly about impeachment. We have Arthur Thompson of the John Birch Society is going to be joining us in the next segment. We're going to be talking about USMCA and the concerns that he and I have about that. But let's take a look at impeachment, because although I think my attitude to this is kind of summed up in the article that Cheryl Atkinson wrote. She said, wake me up when it's over. Okay. I mean, there's nothing new to see here. And we all know what this is about. This is just politics as usual. Slandering President Trump and trying to keep this going as long as they can to try to dip him enough in the polls so they can defeat him at the election, because they know that they're not going to win the vote in the Senate. And as part of that now, we have seen John Bolton's book leaked the very same day that it became available for pre-order. Oh, I mean, that's not about the money at all, is it? I mean, he's just doing this for the good of the nation, right? New York Times published new impeachment claims by John Bolton the same day that Bolton's book became available for pre-order. Revelations from his book, according to the unpublished manuscripts that were reviewed by the New York Times, have Bolton accusing President Trump of tying Ukraine military aid to political motivated investigations. And as Molly Hemingway pointed out, she said that these particular folks who have put this out have a pattern of over-promising and underachieving with their bombshell anti-Trump book rollouts. So you might want to just remember that we've heard over and over again from people like Rachel Maddow and others, right? This is it. We've got it. This is the smoking gun. And then you actually see what's in it. But even more interesting is the article from Zero Hedge. Guess who was in charge of reviewing Bolton's leaked book at the National Security Council? Because, you know, the people who were at the publisher, the Bolton's lawyer, said, well, gee, we're really sorry. It looks like the review process for the book has been corrupted. Well, how would that be corrupted? Well, you have to give the book to the National Security Council before it is allowed to be published. See, that's one of the things that I had an issue with a Snowden book. It's like, how did they authorize this? Right? After the fact, they say, oh, he shouldn't have been allowed to publish that. We know that you have to get pre-approval. Yeah, especially Snowden's book, Permanent Record, was a limited hangout. And it pushed the whole idea behind the war on terror about 9/11 and so forth. Yeah, he was signing up for the CIA to defend us all from the attacks of 9/11 by those men in caves in Afghanistan and so forth. But anyway, I digress. We know, because we've seen it again, that this is being vetted at the National Security Council. And who was it that was vetting the Bolton book? Well, it was the identical twin brother of Democrat impeachment witness Alexander Vindman. You know, that guy who lectured the congressman? I'm here in a he showed up in a uniform that day and demanded to be called by his military title. Remember that guy? How smug he was? I mean, you can't see people like this until, Peter, Strzok and Vindman. I mean, you can't imagine how arrogant these people in Washington are until you actually see these guys testify and sneer in public. Anyway, his twin brother, Yevgeny Vindman, because these guys are Ukrainian, was reportedly in charge of reviewing all publications by current and former officials at the National Security Council. So lo and behold, it's Vindman's brother who's looking at the book, and maybe he's the one who released the details. I don't know. How did they get that? Very interesting. Meanwhile, we have another spotting of Hunter Biden at the Beverly Hills where he hangs out. He's renting a $3.8 million designer home in Hollywood Hills for $12,000 a month. He is driving a $129,000 Porsche, and yet he is stonewalling the judge in a court-ordered financial disclosure as part of a child support situation. And the judge wants to know, he wants him to show cause, if any exists, as to why he would be withholding financial information. Well, Judge, if he were to give you that financial information, it might tell you what's going on in Ukraine. Rand Paul says a disgruntled, angry Bolton is using the leak to make a lot more money. But, it was Rand Paul's father that I want to play a clip of, going back to 1998, when it was the Clinton impeachment. And Ron Paul talked about why Bill Clinton should be impeached. It had nothing to do with Monica Lewinsky. Here's Ron Paul in 1998, video clip 1.
Not only is it annoying, I think it's illegal, I think it's unconstitutional, I think it's an act of war, and I think it's much worse than anything that we have considered under the impeachment of resolutions. I have a prepared statement for tomorrow, and in that statement I talk about a much more serious act that the president committed than anything that we've generally talked about, and that was the illegal bombing of Sudan and Afghanistan for political reasons. $200 million were spent for that without congressional approval. It was a cynical way of directing attention away from the president onto what he was doing in foreign policy. Unfortunately, though, it meets no resistance because too many on our side of the aisle like to drop bombs. Yeah. And I think that's wrong. There's been a lot of talk about the Constitution in the last several weeks, in the last several months. A lot of people holding up the Constitution. But I'd like them to read the Constitution, everybody here in this Congress, to read the Constitution about committing acts of war. And we wouldn't be doing this. Not only is it annoying, I think it's illegal. I think it's unconstitutional.
That's right. That's what he should have been impeached for. You could have impeached him, as I've said many times, for the very credible charges of violent sexual assault and rape brought by these other women. But instead, Ken Starr decided to focus on a Me Too type of allegation of consensual sex, but it was Me Too. And the fact that he committed perjury and then obstructed justice to try to do that. Ron Paul says, look, they spent $200 million to distract everybody. They even did a movie about it, Wag the Dog. I mean, it was not only cynical, but it was brazen. Everybody knew what he was doing. Spending all that money, recklessly bombing other countries. When we talk about pro-life, we just had the March for Life last Friday, and I played a lot of clips from that yesterday. And I tell you, nothing gets me any more upset than the murder of innocent children, ripping them apart inside the womb. I also get upset about people at any age, especially children. They're getting ripped apart by bombs that are being dropped abroad. And the Republican Party seems to never have a problem with that kind of murder. I mean, what's your problem? I mean, how do you the Democrats, well, they don't complain about war anymore. They're fine with killing under any pretense. But Republicans think it's fine if we do that undeclared, for no stated reason, But, let's not do that at home. Look, I understand that the government has the duty to defend our country from people who are criminals who wish to do this country harm. That's why we have a debate, though. That's why we have the Constitution about that. And they just want to look the other way and accept that. We'll be right back. Stay with us. In this segment, we're going to be joined by Arthur Thompson. He is CEO of the John Birch Society. We're going to be